Hey everyone, Jamari here with another video on BVA. Game of Thrones is officially over. The series has come to an end. I just watched the final episode this morning. They introduced the book, A Song of Ice and Fire. Samuel Tarly introduced it, but I can't wait to get into this ending. I'll break it down a little bit, but before I do that, thank you guys for tuning in to the channel. And please, if you wouldn't mind, leave a like on the video. It really helps out. But getting into this, Game of Thrones, the final episode was today. It was bonkers. It had my heart racing. It had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. I literally woke up and couldn't think of anything else but to watch this episode. And now that I did, I can't wait to talk about it. But before I do, there's going to be huge spoilers to come. I'm not going to go over the entire episode, but I will break down some huge spoilers from the end of the episode. I'll quickly go over what happened. So if you haven't watched the last season of Game of Thrones and you haven't seen the season finale, turn this video off now. But if you're still here, then you already know that last episode ended with Daenerys Targaryen actually burning down King's Landing and taking over King's Landing and just killing everybody. She decimated everyone. Queen Cersei died in the wreckage of with her brother Jaime Lannister. It was very poetic, but yeah, Dany just came down and completely destroyed Queen's Landing. And I love how they pictured her as finally the Dragon Queen. And it never rang more true until last episode when she really burned everything down and became the Mad Queen. I love this representation they had here with Daenerys standing in front of Drogon's wings. It was just perfectly captured. But then the craziest thing that happened was when Daenerys and Jon Snow were actually talking, and Jon got this realization that Daenerys would be a mad queen. And you know, they say when the Targaryen's born, you flip a coin, and Jon is heads, Daenerys was tails, and since she was tails, she had to go. Jon kills her while she's in his embrace, stabs her. And the crazy thing about this is you can hear the dragon flying around in the background. You can hear Drogon the whole time after Daenerys dies, and he actually comes up right behind Jon. And it's so crazy because he's budging at Daenerys. She won't move, and then he gets so angry and he's building up this fire, and Jon's terrified. And then he just blows right past Jon and actually destroys the throne, the throne made of the many swords. And this is very poetic. Throughout the show, Daenerys talked about breaking the wheel, ending the cycle. So after her passing, Drogon destroys Drogon completes his mother's mission. And before he flies off with her and they go east of Westeros, which is talked about later on in the episode, we then cut to Tyrion being brought by Grey Worm from the prisoner to see to I guess go to his trial. And in this scene, we actually learn that Jon Snow is also a prisoner for the death of Daenerys Targaryen. So then we go to the Dragon's Pit, where we get all the representatives of the different houses and the great kingdoms. We have all the representation of the seven kingdoms, the Martells, Tully, Aaron. Everyone's there. We have Brienne, Gendry. All of the Stark children are there, but here we're talking about what to do moving forward. And when we're trying to find a new successor for a king, they actually decide Bran to be king. And I don't care what anyone says. You could have thought Bran was the Night King. You could have thought that the Night King was going to wipe everything out. Whatever you thought was going to happen with Bran, I don't think anyone envisioned him being the king of the six kingdoms, because we later learn that Sansa will be the queen of the north, and she does want to keep Winterfell and the north separate as they've been for thousands of years. So I'm liking how they're correcting that, and now instead of the seven kingdoms, they are calling it king of the six kingdoms. And he chooses Tyrion as his hand, and he tells him he'll spend the rest of his life atoning for his sins. And I do want to get into just this quickly. I love how Brienne, she's looking over Sir Jaime Lannister's I forget exactly what it's called. It's this big old book of all the King's Guard and everyone who was ever a part of it, and she rewrites his story and actually tells, and she says died protecting his queen, talking about Cersei. But right here, and let me know down in the comments if you think I'm right or wrong, but I feel like they definitely use this as a representation to kind of show the ending of the Lannister story. We have her sitting here, and to me this just seems like a callback to the earlier seasons with Tywin or even Cersei Lannister, how they would sit there writing, or I'm not exactly sure what to say about it, but to me, when I saw this and she was writing about Jaime Lannister, it just really reminded me of how Tywin would sit, and even later I started thinking that's how Cersei looked a little bit. So just something that clicked in my head, and I really felt like that was bringing that full circle, because then even here you have Tyrion sitting as at the hand seat, and I just always felt like a lot of Tywin's best scenes were when he was at the small council as the hand of the king, and when he was sitting there with that small council. A lot of scenes involved Tyrion and Cersei Lannister, so I definitely just felt like they were just bringing that whole family full circle, putting a final dot on that family by ending Jaime Lannister's Kingsguard page. So now that they have that, that's a conclusion to that storyline. But we also get this, we get like just a closing on everything basically. So we get to like see where all the characters are at the finality of the series. We see who's on the small council. Obviously you got Bronn, Brienne, Samwell Tarly, Sir Bravos, and then of course Tyrion Lannister. But we also get to see that Jon is reunited with Ghost at the Night's Watch, because that's what he was sentenced for life. He was sentenced to the Night's Watch, so that also plays back to where he was in the beginning. Samwell Tarly brings Tyrion the Song of Ice and Fire at the small council, which I think is beautiful. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure Samwell Tarly specifically says in his dialogue that the story of A Song of Ice and Fire picks up after Robert's Rebellion. So it is kind of the book here is kind of to represent all the seasons that we have watched in the show. So what I'm assuming is that whole book is basically just picking up from everything from season 1 of Game of Thrones, obviously going through all the battles and all the wars and the deaths and the marriages and the new relationships built, old relationships burned. I'm just assuming that's them showing like this is why everyone knows this story. But after that, I definitely think seeing this ending that the story of Game of Thrones is about the Starks. I love Tyrion Lannister. Arya Stark's probably my favorite character, but Tyrion Lannister is a close second. But I think it's undeniable that this story is about the Starks. It started with Ned Stark and him going to be Robert's Hand of the King and him figuring out a Game of Thrones, and then it finishes with the kids. So, regardless of what you look at, regardless of what season, whether it be the early seasons with Ned Stark or the family, or the later seasons where it's focusing on Robb, or even the last 4 Stark children that are left alive, you can even see at the very end they show all of their paths. Arya's going west of Westeros, and we learn that Jon Snow is going back to the Night's Watch, where I feel like he belongs, of course. But interesting with Arya going west of Westeros is no one knows what's west there. So this could possibly be a branch off to one of the spin-off series, but not sure. I hope so. But we then see Sansa being queened, getting her crown as the Queen of the North. But like I said, whether it's any of them or even Bran Stark finally becoming king of the 6 kingdoms, the end of the show is a finalization of these characters, of the Stark children, whether it be Sansa in the north, Arya on the boat getting ready to sail west, or even Jon Snow arriving home in the north. This show is definitely a story of House Stark and the growth and development of that house. But the last shot is even Jon Snow going off into the Northwoods. Take with that what you will. Then we cut to the credits. Thank you for tuning in to the video. Thank you for checking out my channel. Please don't forget to like and comment on the video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell for notifications.